Councillor Darren Sanders. I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing. I'm just going to do some fire safety keeping. Everyone in this room, I think, knows the drill, but I have to repeat it anyway. So if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate this room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Portsmouth Cultural Trust fire marshal regulations, because we're in a building run by the Portsmouth Cultural Trust, anyone who signed into the Guildhall reception desk should remember to sign out when leaving the building after today's meeting. Now, this is all being web streamed. Hello to everybody who is watching. And I need to draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting is being filmed from a camera at a fixed location at the back of this meeting room, and the recording will be on the Council's website. The camera will mainly capture the backs of anyone making deputations, but there will be some footage of them as they approach, which doesn't apply now because they've all approached anyway, and leave the table where the microphones are located, and of people entering or leaving the room whilst the meeting is in progress. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone remember to use the microphones provided when they are speaking. That is luckily the formal bit. So my next task is to get everybody to be introduced. I shall start on my right.
Joanne Miles-Smith, Democratic Services.
James Hill, Director of Housing, Neighbourhoods and Building Services.
Alison Toutman, Supported Housing Business Partner.
Jo Bennett, Head of Business Relationship Growth and Support.
Wayne Leighton, Finance Manager.
Councillor Jebanu, Paulsgrove Ward. Councillor Joe Hooper, Paulsgrove Ward.
Councillor Tom Coles, Opposition Spokesperson for Housing.
Tom's been kind. He's the Labour opposition spokesperson for housing, just to be completely accurate. But thank you very much. So my next task is to find if are there any apologies for absence, Joanne?
I don't have apologies from members. I've heard from the Residents' Consortium who've sent their apologies.
Please record the Residents' Consortium apologies. Does anybody have anything interesting to declare? This may be a relative term. This is onto the Declaration of Interests file. Joe, you're looking pensive, which always worries me, but there we are. So there is nothing to declare. Okay, so we are now going into the Longdean Lodge development for supported housing. How I intend to do this, if colleagues are okay, is that I will ask that James or his designated representative actually talks us through the report, and then here I understand Joe and Gemma, you're here to do some deputations. Is that correct? Yes. Is it one of you, both of you? I don't mind. Ask some questions. Oh, okay. All right. Now I am really worried. Okay. So then Joe and Gemma can ask some questions or make some comments as we go along, and then what we'll do is that we may ask some questions back just as clarification. I may ask some questions, and then I will get Tom to ask some questions, and then I will do some summing up. So that's how that goes. So it's either James or Alison to start. So whoever wishes to go first.
I'll go first. So the former site of the Longdean Lodge up in Paulsgrove came to the forefront as a good replacement site for building new properties to go into the supported housing portfolio. At the end of last year, the Housing Scrutiny Panel looked at supported housing as a whole and agreed that the supported housing portfolio the City Council have is very good and that it should be extended. There is always a very high demand for supported housing from our colleagues in adult social care. We've obviously got new developments at Easton Road within some at King William Street, and there'll be a continued demand for this type of housing. When they demand this housing from us, they give us an idea of who needs to go and live there. So when we look at the type of housing we're going to build, it's normally bespoke to those people's names that we put in. Ultimately, it might be slightly different people who do move in because things change in the duration of a build. So this idea came from providing more shared accommodation for adults with learning disabilities who are physically disabled as well as have a cognitive impairment, and also some independent living for adults who are able to live more independently but have a care requirement from adult social care. The build itself generates a saving to adult social care for its care because it moves people who are currently in smaller properties into one big property. So the build has 5 4-bedroom shared flats with 24/7 support, and it also has 8 independent living flats as well as some communal areas within them. The site previously, as you know, had Longdean Lodge site on it, which means we don't have to have a planning change of use. It already has that use on there. With the good bus routes, as we've talked about previously with Darren, it allows those 8 independent people good route into Cosham and down into the city as well.
Is that it, Alison? Thank you. Joe and Gemma, fire away. I don't know who's going to start first, but agree amongst yourselves and fire away.
I've just because I've had some feedback from residents. Okay, so it's just a clarification. Have residents been consulted about the development that live around the area?
Planning consultation is about to take place, so
Right.
this is part of moving into that process.
Yep.
So there's been pre-app consultation within planning, and then there'll be statutory consultation as part of the development moving forward.
So then residents will
Yeah.
be told, informed, kind of thing around
And have the
it.
capacity to ask questions,
Questions.
etc.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Right, I'd just like to say, because obviously we'd had a chat before about this, I think it's a fantastic initiative, but local residents do have some questions. So, one particular chap I've been speaking to has expressed concerns that the land once was deemed to be contaminated. Have you got any further information on this? And if this is the case, can you explain how this matter has been rectified?
So, as part of the pre-application work and as part of the start on site, etc., there will be work to look at the soil, to look at how foundations will be laid, to look at that. And if there is soil contamination, there will either be a need to look at how that soil is removed from site or how it's managed in situ. So that would be a standard test that would happen as part of the environmental works relating to a build.
And also, during the build process, what steps will be implemented to minimise disruption to residents living in Tintern Close and Longdean Close, as well as controls on site traffic entering and exiting the site in a densely populated area with blind bends, narrow roads and pedestrian movement?
So as part of the design stage that will go forward now with the contractor, what we will look at is a site plan that looks at construction movements as well as time. We always aim to look at considerate measures for those living nearby. Things like weekend work, loud work, any very heavy duty work would always be consulted, and we would expect our build contractor to be communicating throughout the period of the build with the local residents to make sure that there's a possibility for them to feedback anything that's difficult and to be aware of when noisy works will be happening.
Residents have also inquired as to why the old building was condemned. Was it not fit for refurbishment or adaptation?
The Longdean Lodge site was found as surplus to the needs of adult social care at the time. This site came to us following that decommissioning. I can ask the question of the project manager who dealt with Longdean Lodge. I personally don't know the answer, as it came to us as a redundant site.
Can you explain more about the grant component of the funding? How will this work?
I can explain. Yep. So Portsmouth City Council are eligible under Homes England to apply for funding to support a bid for supported housing under the Care and Specialist Support Housing Fund. We have already been successful in the past in securing £4 million worth of funding to support this type of accommodation. So the application will go in the same vein to support this accommodation.
So the cost is approximately 6.6 million, is that right? So what sort of proportion will the grant funding make up of that 6.6 million?
That will depend on the amount of grant funding that we receive, but I can't tell you as a simple answer to that at the present moment in time until Homes England confirm how much we can have.
Sorry, and the other thing is we are able to use right to buy receipts up to a maximum of 30%.
Okay, I noticed the property has been described as supported housing for people with learning disabilities. Now, you've already alluded that that client group might change. Yet there is a caveat in the quality impact assessment detailing that the property could well be used for clients with adult mental health issues and vulnerable adults. I, of course, would understand why you would need, obviously, to keep that flexibility, but could you clarify a couple of things for me, please? Could you firstly define what is meant by vulnerable adults? What kind of service users does this label define?
The statement that Alison made earlier about how the client group could change, it isn't the client group, it's the particular individuals within that client group. So there is already, this property is being developed with a very specific cohort in mind. Obviously, at the point that we come forward to the day that we open, if those people are not in the same circumstances, then they would not be the exact individual that would move in. That's what she meant by that. The property is being commissioned for our adult social care partners. A number of our clients within that group have either a single diagnosis or a dual diagnosis, and what we provide is a service for supported living. So the requirement from our perspective is that the people living there need the level of support that that property provides, and that is a very specific client group, so it's unlikely to have significant change.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that answers my second question as well. No, that's it for me. Thank you.
Are you sure? I don't want you to come back after we've all finished, you know, because that's a bit. But thank you very much for raising all those questions. Tom?
Everything I had prepared has been covered already.
Joe's answered all your questions. This is excellent news, Right, so this is my turn. I now have to declare a minor interest in that I chaired the scrutiny panel that Alison referred to earlier on, so I know how important it is to try and have this sort of accommodation. I want to put on record my thanks to our predecessors, Luke Stubbs as portfolio holder for adult social care, and Jenny Brent as portfolio holder for housing, as well as to my colleague Matthew Winnington since May, who's the portfolio holder for adult social care. This is an incredibly good idea, and I know how much things have improved for my own ward in terms of both Easton Road and Moorings Way as well, and I believe that this is going to be a significant improvement and investment in the city, and I'm delighted we've got some praise from some of the Portsgrove councillors, so I'm delighted. With regards to consultation, I just wanted to stress a few things. I don't like notices on lampposts or letters through doors to 5 people. I had similar problems with that with Kingston Prison and told the planning department to go more widely, and I want to make sure that the consultation is genuine and meaningful, because there are clearly some issues around the edges, some of which have got absolutely nothing to do with whether it gets planning permission or not, but which really, really matter to residents, and I want to come to that in a bit. Because things like construction, Joe's pointed out correctly, actually do matter to residents. Doesn't matter, it actually has no bearing on whether it goes through planning or not, but it is really, really important that people do not have lorries parking outside their front door when they shouldn't be, and that they're not being woken up at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So I would strongly suggest that as part of the consultation process we listen to local residents around what sort of things they want. I would suggest, but it's more up to Gemma, Joe and John Ferret and also local residents to find out whether they want things like a construction management plan, things like a dedicated mobile phone number that somebody can ring 24/7. And I've always been very interested in local construction liaison groups whereby residents and the 3 Portsgrove councillors, if they wish, are able to sit down with people on a regular basis and work out what's going on. So if a lorry is parking where it shouldn't be, or someone's being an idiot, which is what can often happen, that these things can be sorted out early and often. That would be my suggestion, but ultimately that's got to be up to local people to decide, not me, because the last thing they want is somebody like me waving my size 9s around. But I hope that will anticipate, look at some of the questions that Joe and Gemma have rightly asked. So on that basis, I'm happy to proceed to the next stage, which I believe is talking to local people, not with notices on lampposts, or not just with notices on lampposts. And I want to thank Gemma and Joe for their time today. And please continue to talk to the team. The same extension goes to Councillor Ferret, John Ferret as well, just to make sure that any potential questions are answered. Is that all right? Not at all. Thank you for coming. Thank you everyone for coming. That actually concludes the meeting.